showed you by Tahan Group for its juicy dividend yield. That's what we will investigate in this video. Hi, I'm a French investor diving in the ASEAN stock market. If you like my content, please subscribe to the channel. Let's go for this video. What are they doing? It's a Malaysian company operating in the timber and oil palm industry. Optionally, and also minor part of their activity is reforestation, but I think the main segment of this company is oil palm, which is a commodity booming currently because of use for combustible, but also because all commodities are booming currently due to the conflict with the Iranian war between the US and Iran. So with that, we have a cyclical company. So beware of that, because cyclical company have volatile results. But for some years now, the oil palm industry is booming. So let's go for this investigation. So as I already mentioned, this company is listed on the Bursa Malaysia of Kuala Lumpur. It has a 2.5 billion ringgit market cap, so it's a pretty small cap. It's operating in the food product industry, but I would say it's operating in the commodity industry, so it's cyclical. The stock price went from 1.7778 ringgit in July 2016 up to 5.65 ringgit in 2026. So I think the performance is fine for this company because we are operating in a cyclical business and they were able to create value for the shareholders despite that. So good news. Let's have a look at revenue growth. Since it's a commodity producer, it's a price taker. The price is set by the market, so they don't have any impact on that but they have an impact on the volumes produced. So they are able to grow their production. That's good news, but still we can see that the revenue is cyclical. Median revenue growth over the last 10 years is 5.8%, which is okay. And in December 25, year over year, we had a 17% year-on-year growth. Impressive performance. They did some acquisitions, 850 million ringgit. So it's quite important. So this company is growing organically, but also with some acquisitions. Let's have a look at margins up. Since it's cyclical, you know that the margins can be cyclical as well, because if the revenue decrease, you have operational deleveraging, meaning that your margins are compressed, unfortunately. Here we can see that overall it's not bad, but since the beginning of the last 10 years, it decreased a bit regarding the gross and the EBITDA margin. Since 2021, we have an uptrend for margins. Of course, there was a boom in 2022 with all commodities that went to the upside since the oil and gas went to the upside. We have some use for palm oil in the for fuel, so it was also included in this boom. Now it corrected in 2023, but now we can see that it's pretty stable around the median. So we have 26.5% gross profit margin, not bad. EBITDA margin is at 21%. Again, it's a good performance. The net income margin is at 11.3%, and the good thing is this company is cash flow generative. So we have free cash flow above the net income margin, a free cash flow margin of 14%. Pretty cool, I would say. So the margins are cyclical because we are in a cyclical industry, but it's well managed and we are kinda okay on this front. Let's continue with net income conversion into free cash flow. Way more free cash flow than diluted net income. Good news. It depends how on how you get this free cash flow, because you can still cut capex and have a good free cash flow, but after some years your free cash flow will decrease because of that. But here we can see that we have positive net working capital. If we compare to the revenue, we have 1.9 billion ringgit in revenues, and the net working capital is 170 million ringgit. So we have 10%, bit less, 10% net working capital requirement. I think it's okay. When you are below 25%, there is no worry to have. And if we check the change in net working capital, it's positive over the last 10 years with 461 million ringgit. So unfortunately, since September 2022, it's still started to increase again. So this must be monitored to make sure that it doesn't grow too fast compared to the revenue growth, because when you have a positive net working capital, it means you have to use some of your liquidities to finance the operations, and because of that, if you don't have a good liquidity, because of that, it impacts your free cash flow generation, of course. Let's have a look at capex against D&A. We have more depreciation and amortization than capex, so it means this company is not reinvesting that much in its fixed asset base. Maybe at some stage they will have an issue to capture additional market share, because you invest to grow and you grow to capture market share. So if you are selling market share as they are doing it here, at some stage, maybe you will have an impact on free cash flow, of course, and dividend and so on. So this must be explained. Why are they not reinvesting at the same level as they are depreciating? I don't know. But maybe they see less growth in the future. We have 1.3 billion ringgit in other non-cash items. So this is non-cash. So you have more free cash flow than due to net income, despite this this positive change in net working capital. So overall, if you want to value the equity of this company, it's preferable to use a price over free cash flow multiple than a price over earnings. Let's have a look at profitability in terms of return on invested capital. The median value is 7.9%. It's capital intensive, this kind of business, so you cannot expect to have a huge level of profitability, except when you have a boom in the commodity price. But in December 2025, we have 9.6% return on invested capital, which is a good performance, and I think it's above the weighted average cost of capital, meaning that when they reinvest, they are creating value for the shareholder. They don't seem to reinvest that much, but at least they are pretty profitable. So that's good news. Let's have a look at net debt. We have a positive cash position, so a net treasury. And with this positive treasury, you have, of course, interest and investment income. So this belongs to the shareholders, but maybe they should accelerate the shareholder remuneration, because this has an opportunity cost. The interest rates in Malaysia are around 3% for the short-term investment. Maybe a shareholder would prefer to have some cash to deploy on other stocks and have a higher expected return. So this has a cost. So maybe, and the net treasury position, I think it belongs to the shareholder. So they should pay back the shareholder with this treasury instead of growing the net cash position, which is generating a bit of interest, but not at the level that could be expected by shareholders. Let's have a look at shareholders' remuneration. Up, we have 270 million ringgit free cash flow and 132 million dividends. So it's well covered. It's pretty generous in terms of payout ratio, but it's not constantly growing. So it depends. I think the free cash flow are cyclical, of course. We can take a short-term median value for the free cash flow, it's 257 million ringgit. The dividend should be adapted to this level, this median level, and the median value for the dividend is 154 million ringgit. So with that, you have a pretty interesting dividend yield at 5.3%. I think this you don't have share buybacks because it's not common in Asia, share buybacks. It's mostly for larger companies, so they are returning cash to the shareholder with dividend. I think the next dividend is above this level and is something like 7% dividend yield for 2026. So this could be interesting. And it's well covered so far by the free cash flow. Now let's have a look at valuation. You have two ways, I think, to value the company. Now, you don't have any discount on price over tangible book value. That's it could be great, but it's rarely the case. You have maybe a price to book discount. We have no discount on this one, so it's the only discount, and with big quotes here, it's on the EV over EBITDA multiple. Why big quotes? Because compared to the median, the last 10 years median, you have, I would say, 10% discounts. And the current level at 5.1 is not really big. And even for the median value, it's not really expensive at 5.7 times. So I still see some upside, some multiple expansion for Tan Hall Holdings. So with that, when if you invest in this company, you can wait with the good dividend yield until the multiple reach your target level. Frankly, for this kind of company, you can target 7 times. And at this level, it's pretty discounted. So to conclude on Tan Hall Holdings, it's cyclical, yes, but the quality and the discount are good enough to maybe put it in your watch list. I hope you found this video useful. If it's the case, subscribe to the channel and I see you in the next one. Bye bye.